Hey, it's Kevin Lawton with the New Warehouse Podcast here at MODEX 2022 in the booth, and I am joined by Joe Rooney. He is the Executive Vice President at Baker Industrial, and he's going to talk to us about Baker, what it is that they do, what they're seeing recently in the racking industry, and kind of what they're seeing here at MODEX too as well in those regards. So Joe, welcome to the booth. How are you?
Awesome, Kevin. Thanks for having me.
Definitely happy to have you here. Definitely happy to connect in person. So why don't you give us just a little overview of Baker and what it is that you guys do?
For sure. So Baker was founded in 2004. We were your traditional installation company, right?
Okay.
Predicated mainly on gondola shelving as it applied to a retail space. Ownership has a background in material handling coming from a Canadian version of the Raymond organization. And he moved to Houston and worked a couple of different positions within material handling before he decided to start his own company back in 2004.
Interesting.
And when we first set out, the intention was to be a good, reliable installer in the Houston area. And from 2004 to 2022 today, we've far surpassed what we ever thought this thing could possibly be, in the sense that we had a single four-man crew, of which our owner, Jason Lefebvre, was a part of. When this all began to 16 crews. We averaged 5-man per crew, with our largest being a 21-man crew. So a pretty sizable, increase over the years, and we've just morphed from a different type of company of, we'd come in and do a little bit of your stick rack warehouse install, pallet rack, along with the gondola shelving of that, and into a full systems integrator where it's a pick mod, it's a mezzanine, it's conveyors. We're not too heavy on the conveyor side of it. We'll do a little bit of it, primarily all steel. Right? That's what we're there for, is to put up the frames and the beams and the decks and the mezzanines, and from popping the layouts to the finish out, where we'll see it soup to nuts all the way through. So, but a big change from where we started is a regional company, right? I joined Baker in 2018. I came from a different industry. I was from the imaging industry, right? So a lot of the trade show banners and booths that you see, right?
You were doing that stuff.
Textile. I worked for a German textile mill. My background was more in sales and in how to grow channel, right? How to build channel sales, and the management thereof. So I looked at what we were doing as an organization, and I thought, why keep such a good thing so close to home when we can be so many other things that I believe there was a need for, right? But it took a little bit of getting on the road and getting out and talking to, a lot of our business is through the forklift dealers themselves, right? So the Raymonds, the Crowns, right? Those reps, where they're running into the opportunities, they can buy the steel from wherever, and they come to us for that installation. I just thought there was an inherent need for an organization that had values like we do, right? And that's really what separates Baker. It's just our why, right? Like, we really care. We want to make sure that there's a good bond. Like, we've got some symmetry with our customers that we're talking to and doing business with, right? Like, their why matters to us, and my why should matter to them, right? And it's beyond just quality products and quality service, right? It's the quality of the relationship that we have with each other as a vendor-customer relationship. It's the quality of the relationships internally in our office, right? The quality of our communications that we have, whether it be internal or external. All of that matters to us, and I think that's what makes us different. Is that's what we're looking for, right? It's got to be the right fit. We're not running around trying to. I don't want to be a name on a list, right? I want to be the guy in the company that you come to for that.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's a great way to go about it, and a great vision and mission to have for the company, in the way that you approach these projects and your customers, and the way you want your customers to view you. I think that's definitely respectable. And so with that being said, I mean, there's obviously with these projects, the type of projects you guys are doing with the racking you mentioned and installing these different things. Certainly there's been an uptick recently. In these types of projects, I can imagine for you, with people needing more space, needing to utilize their space in a better way and maximize that space. So talk to us a little bit about how kind of the last 2 years has been for you guys, and what are you seeing from the industry in terms of growth?
Okay, for sure. So again, being relatively new, right? I'm for years and change into to being in the material handling. I think COVID, right? Like I'd like to think I coined the phrase. COVID was the catalyst, right? And to change the way that people evaluate supply chain, right? When I first came in 2018, it was still kind of the last look item, right? Like there's a budget, it exists, right? But they want to look at the racking in our warehouse and what are we doing in regards to how we move and store goods, right? That was kind of the last look on the budget line. You know, COVID changed all that. And it really made people want to look at how they evaluate supply chain and what they're doing with those dollars in that space differently. All of a sudden we got springboarded to the front, and I think, you know, it's a super apparent when you look at the market in general, right? Like whether it's the real estate market, 1.5 billion square feet in e-commerce and distribution between now and 2025 or 27. I don't know.
So it's a lot.
What the accurate? It's a ton, right? So, you know, and with that, we've all got the same crazy, you know, the real estate, the commercial real estate is no different than what we're seeing in the residential market, in the sense that it's expensive, right? So the cost to enter is not quite the same, right? So now you've got people, how does that apply to the warehouse, right? I'm going somewhere with your question, right? So that is, you've got the space, right? But maybe you've got 12-foot aisles. So do you want to do a 6-foot aisle? Do you want to do a 3-foot? Right. Are we going to a narrow aisle application because that's going to give you X number of additional pallet positions based on what total square footage we're looking at? Do you want to go higher? There's a lot of people that have 30-foot clear height that traditionally never use that, right? Maybe they didn't know enough about a high pile permit or just storage in general at height, right? What are their capacities? What are the limitations? And I think that's what we've seen as an organization grow the most, is more of a condensed, they want to go narrower and taller, right? And try to use as much space as they can and be good stewards of, I think, you know, from a fiscal responsibility as an organization, you know, not everybody can be an Amazon and just go grab warehouse space like it's, you know, like you're grabbing pennies out of a pond, right?
Just pop them up like crazy.
And we do a bit of work for them, right? We do a lot of wire guidance work for Amazon on the direct side in their traditional non-sort and their Kariba facilities, and you know, so I think having seen both sides of that equation, and everybody kind of wants to drive the ship that way and be more like the Amazon, I think that's a little bit of a misnomer. I think people want to be responsible and to know what the Amazon effect is on you know, next day delivery type, and the fact that, you know, that shirt that you buy from, you know, your Dillard's or your Nordstrom, they might not have any more than 2 of that size in the bag, but you'll get it next day because it's going to ship from a distribution center. And that's where the bulk of it's going. And I think the, you know, more narrow, taller, a little bit of automation, but not as much as I would have expected. But that could just be because as a company, we're not as strong on the automation side. Sans the wire guidance, you know, or automated guided vehicles. You know, we do a lot of the installs for that, as far as not the vehicle themselves, but the path, wire path, and installation on the floor. So conveyors and that, again, like I said at the beginning, touched on, like we can do a little bit, but not like some of the other guys out there that are full on integration. They're real big into automation.
Okay, very interesting to hear that, and obviously, you know, it's been an interesting time, I think, for the supply chain, as we mentioned, and, you know, certainly a lot of pivoting and trying to figure out how to maximize that space and you know, get more product in under that roof. So with that, you know, kind of being said, and, you know, understanding that, you know, people are trying to squeeze the racks together and go higher with them as well, I'm curious, you know, what has been some of, or maybe one of the kind of the most unique requests that the company has had for an installation, something that kind of made you think like, oh, this is different than, you know, things we've done in the past?
You know, I think when it gets down to it, the most unique over the past year, I would say, would have come back in mid-October-ish range. We had a customer that had a unique need. They already had existing pallet rack. It was a traditional brand, one of the big manufacturers out there. They wanted to go taller. They wanted to go narrower too, right? So we were looking at the scope of project, and we're saying, okay, how do we accomplish that? Okay, narrower, it's easy. It's just lines on paper and math. Taller is you're going to either buy new, new hardware, right?
Yeah.
Where you have to buy a new upright, and you can still save the same beams, but then you have to find someone to sell that material to.
Right.
Well, they had a special request to go from, they wanted to increase their about 16 feet, but they wanted to do it in splices. So they want to keep their existing rack, but they want to put splices. And trying to come up with somebody to do the engineering that could support that, because that's super important. Safety is paramount to what we do,
absolutely.
right? Like we don't want to put our guys in a bad spot. I certainly don't want to put anybody's customer in a bad spot. And being the fact that we deal through that dealer channel, you got to keep in mind again. I'm the third layer, right? I'm not always direct with the physical end user. So we're trying to solve a problem and have a conversation that we might not have all the pieces of the puzzle to. So I think that was a little bit of the one of the more challenging, where we had to reach out to outside engineering, and then reach out to, again, the manufacturer to come up with the applicable solution to, could we splice at that height to support X weight? And the answer was yes, but not for 100% of what they were doing, right? You're going to reach a max capacity where there's so many 1,000 pounds per level that I can't support at that level, at that height with it. So I think that was the most challenging, just given the breadth of the project, right? Like you were talking about 26,000 pallet positions that they're trying to increase, right? Gain 26,000 more at height like that. It's quite a big task, right? We were able to achieve, I think on target, we delivered about 65% of those.
Okay.
Of course, we couldn't hit them all, but that was, again, it was a safety-driven.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only other way was to go, a different course, which required quite an investment from the end users.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's very interesting. And so from the safety perspective, I mean, when you guys go into to do an installation and or maybe even when you go in to assess a current environment where they're looking to maybe add additional racking or go to narrow aisle, what are some of the things that you see in existing racking that scares you, that customers don't really address, or maybe they don't think is that serious?
Yeah, so there's a lot, right? We could probably do a whole podcast on that.
I'm sure we could.
There, a lot of it is the amount of damage that's looked at to be deemed acceptable, right? Like, every post is engineered, right? And I'm not saying every single post as it goes through a manufacturing process, that particular post is engineered, but by design, right? The webbing, the column itself, the size, the shape, the bends, roll formed or structural, it matters, right? So if any part of that is altered in any way, you're deviating from what the original engineering specs on that say was. This has been spec'd for XYZ weight, right, or height. And I think the amount of eyes that get kind of turned in a different direction, that's not so bad, or we can live with that. That's one thing, and I think that's primarily anybody can see, right? Somebody with no experience would walk it. The thing that bothers me the most, I think, having gained more knowledge over the years, and we have another company, anchor manufacturer, where again, we manufacture pallet rack. We have roll formers, and we roll form steel frames, beams, and a structural side, cantilever rack. Having been more involved in that over the years, the thing that bothers me the most is the amount of times that I'm in an application or I'm in a system where I've seen somebody sell something as an application that just doesn't fit what they need because they didn't ask the right questions, right? Like what weight per level, right? And they might have, let's just say in this case, they're storing too much weight per level for that beam face size. And you see that at scale in the warehouse, and you look at it and you think to yourself, man, it's a potential problem, right? And 9 times out of 10, when you ask the question to the end user, whether or not, because we weren't at the forefront of that transaction, we don't know if this conversation did or did not take place. But most of the time they say, nobody ever asked us that. And that's what I see is just it's the misrepresentation of the product itself, whether it be a column, frame size, right? So it could just be a profile size. The difference between a 1 5/8 from a 2 5/8 to a 3 by 3, it matters, right? It matters on what your max, your max capacity of weight is, and then per level and what that face size of that beam is, and how that translates upwards and across for the system as a whole. That's really the biggest concern, because it's just you've got some, and I don't know that they do it out of ill will, right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any ill will involved in it. I think it's just they're not as, the guys that have sold that system weren't really in tune with what they were selling and asking the right questions from their customer. And again, that's what makes us different than Baker. Like we're going to ask more questions than the average installer. I don't want your business. I don't want to be a guy on a list, right? Like I said, I want to be the guy, but I want to make sure I'm the right guy, and I want to make sure you're the right guy. If I'm not doing right by you, then you know, it's game over from the get-go, right? We just don't have that good synergy. And I think that's a big, you know, misconception in the industry, is that, you know, a beam is a beam and a frame is a frame. And that's just not the case. Not saying everybody does it, but I've seen it a lot.
Well, we're not naming any names, don't worry.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's certainly an interesting point and an interesting takeaway for the listener there, because, you know, especially as you're looking at these types of things, and you know, it's not every day that you're putting in your racking, right? So, you know, when you come across that project, you want to make sure that you're getting the right information, and like you said, that the right questions are being asked, whether it's by the customer or whether it's by the installer or the provider of that racking. You know, you need to make sure that the right information is out there, because, like I said, from a safety perspective, it's a huge thing. And like you said, like an eighth of an inch could make a big difference, you know, at the end of the day.
100%.
So I really appreciate you coming and sharing those insights with us, Joe. So if people want to find out more information about Baker Industrial, how can they do that?
Well, easiest way to figure us out, right? www.bakerindustrialsupply.com. You'll find everything you want to know there, and reach out, you know, direct, right? Like Joe Rooney, LinkedIn. I'm always taking calls, right? I don't know if I can drop my direct cell phone number on this or not, but
I mean, you might have to change the numbers. It might get blown up.
I hope I do. 214-548-9345. Hit me up for all, you know, racking related questions or opportunities where, you know, we're actively out there pursuing. We've got good partners now, but we're, you know, it's like we have a saying, right? We're always happy. We're never satisfied, right? So there's always more out there. There's something better that we can do. You know, we're always kind of looking at what's next, but in the sense of what's next for us in the what we're good at, right? I'm not your automation robotic wizard, right? But I'm your stick rack guy, you know, systems guy, mezzanine guy, all day long. And you know, with the Anchor coming on board, I'm super excited and hope that you and I maybe can connect in the future and talk a little bit more about that vertical of our business, because that's really what's really got us excited now is the manufacturing capabilities.
All right, definitely. We'll stay tuned for part 2 then, and we'll put all the information about Baker Industrial at thenewwarehouse.com. So, Joe, thank you once again for coming by the booth, and enjoy the rest of your show.
Yeah, super cool. Thanks for having me.